Financial discussions is typically one of the hardest discussions to have because most of the time we only like to talk about money when we're talking about potentially making money. We don't like to talk about or disclose our bad habits. We don't like to discuss the things we need to learn about money or any of that. Typically, most people always want to talk and come from a place of power and empowerment when it relates to finances. Even when that's not our reality, that's at least what we want to portray. No one wants to be the person who doesn't have. And it makes sense. I've been in situations where I have not had money. I have been embarrassed by my situations. I've been in situations where it's like, you know, you had money, you know, you have a job, but you were not spending it wisely. And so you end up in positions, financial positions that are embarrassing, especially at a certain age, and you find yourself feeling like I am repeating a cycle, and then it's easy to start feeling like woe is me. So when it comes to finances, it's very intimidating. One of the things that I have learned, it is so much easier and we are more apt to believe in the Christian community in money coming out, a check coming in the mail, unexpected money. We're more apt to believe in that than to actually do the work and to really believe in ourselves to be disciplined about our money. It's not easy. I will never tell anybody that it is easy. I will never tell anybody that it's simple, because when you start dealing with money, you are trying to break generational curses, meaning you are trying to destroy images. You are fighting off ideas about wealth. You are challenging the things that you know or you think you know when it comes to money. You are working against everything that you have believed for years in order to adapt and accept something else and change it. And most of the time, that change is just really you changing the way you see it, changing the way you look at it, changing the way you manage it. And that is a hard pill to swallow. It is so much easier to think about, oh, if I worked a job where I made more money, oh, if I had more this, if I had more that. It is far easier and far likely for you to think about that than it is to think about how you manage the money, where you're spending the money, and where you're putting the money. Because, I mean, realistically, we don't want to blame ourselves. We tend to think that, oh, there's no way I would do harm to myself. There's no way I would spend money that I don't have or put myself in a financial bind if I didn't have to. And so to even entertain the thought that, wait a minute, you're doing this to yourself, it's hard. But in reality, that's really what it is. When we talk about tithing and you hear people talk about tithing, a lot of times people will say, oh, you're tithing and you're broke. A lot of times people will use it as an excuse not to tithe because they're like, oh, I gave money and now I don't have it. Like I've said before in other videos, tithing is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not something that's going to generate these unexpected checks that just float in the air, that come from nowhere. It's not going to do any of that. Tithing brings about a discipline. And when you intentionally tithe and give your money back to God who gave it to you, you're giving only 10% of your income. If 10% of your income is going to throw you in the hole, is going to damage you, you got to start thinking, now, what am I doing with the other 90%? Because if I walked up to you right now and gave you a dime, if I had $1 and I said, hey, I'm going to give you a dime, that dime would not make or break you. There is not anything you could go say, oh my gosh, I got the dime I needed. Now it's going to change my life. It will not. That 10% in anybody else's hands does nothing. So when people make the argument that they tithe and that's why they're broke, it's not true. It is not even plausible. It is not even financially plausible to be broke by giving a dime out of every dollar. It's just not, because a dime is so insignificant. If we were in accounting right now and we were balancing the books for a company and we got down to within 10 cents, we would all go home and sleep well and say that number is insignificant, and we reconcile close enough and call it a discrepancy and keep moving. The only time tithing becomes an issue is when you have already mismanaged the 90%. That God said, hey, all I'm asking you to be obedient is to give me 10%. And anytime you mismanage the rest, then that 10% seems to matter so much more. Because in your mind, you're spending that same money over and over again. And you're telling yourself you could be so much better if you had it. And that's not true. If you're not able to manage 90% of your income, why would 10% make any difference? It doesn't. Those are all tricks of the enemy, tricks in your mind, and things we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better or to make ourselves feel a certain way. But in reality, it really does nothing. When you think about it and you put it in those terms, let's go and look at where and why we mismanage our money. Because that's where everything is leading us toward. And like I told you, there are 3 things, which are all sinful, that make us mismanage money: pride of life, lust of the eye, and lust of the flesh. When you think about it, a lot of times, and you hear people say it all the time, trying to keep up with the Joneses and all of that. And I'm not going to down anybody or critique anybody who's trying to have something, because I don't think that's fair. But what I do know is that we do often try to move and have things in certain seasons when we haven't prepared for that season. You might see somebody buying a house and you might think, well, I've been wanting a house longer. Wanting and really doing something about it are 2 different things. There are a lot of things that we want as people, but yet we will not plan for them and we will not do the work so that we can have them. In other words, we're more comfortable with just talking about it rather than actually sacrificing. We enjoy talking about things and we want everything, but often we don't want to give anything. And that's really the truth when you look at it. Anytime people achieve anything, you ask anybody who's a first-time home buyer. I have a cousin who's a realtor, and she's always talking about it. She's always saying, hey, bought my first house. We ate Roman noodles for dinner. We did this, we did that. She sacrificed, and she bought it as a single parent. When you look at that, that meant there were a lot of things that she missed in that year. There were a lot of things people were doing, and she was like, I can't do that because I have my eye on the prize. I can't do this. I can't go here. And because we're able to see in social media so many things going on and everybody moving, that pride of life and that lust of the eye will make us do things we're not ready to do. And so when you start trying to move according to somebody else's pocket, then you are becoming lustful and you're setting yourself up for failure. It's just like with anything. You go, anytime you talk about getting a car or any asset, most of the time we don't save any money. We don't wait to see like, okay, let me see if I can afford the note. We jump into the note and then we say, I'll figure it out. Stop me when I'm not being honest. And you're not going to stop me. And because we don't have a strategy or a plan, or we don't want to wait to implement the plan, then we jump into debt, and then we get frustrated about the debt, and then we're mad at everybody else because of the debt. Rent to own became so popular and so easy because nobody had to wait anymore. I am a layaway girl. I grew up in the time of layaway, and I have always liked expensive things. I think I told you that. And one of the ways I would get it would be through layaway. But that meant I had to wait for my product. And I didn't mind waiting because if I put something on layaway, it was something I liked. I thought about it. I knew and I could stay focused on the prize. I didn't have a cell phone to take a picture of it, but it stayed in my mind. I was so serious about whatever outfit that was, or multiple outfits, that by the time I got them, I had already figured out what I was going to wear, how, when, everything. Now with rent to own, you get to get things before you pay for them. But yet, in that rent to own program, they ask you exactly what day you get paid on, and then they want 3 paycheck stubs so that they can make sure the date you told them is the date that you get paid on. If it's every 2 weeks before your check hits, and as a matter of fact, at the same time your direct deposit is going in, their money is coming out. They're getting it before you get it, which leaves you already in a deficit. And sometimes, because we have not stopped using our budget up here and to write it down, you're paying multiple bills at the same time, and then before you know it, you get paid and the money is gone. It will never be tithing that will be the reason why you're broke. It will be the way you handle money. And just because you give your tithes does not give you a pass to be irresponsible with your money. The Bible tells us that we're to be good stewards over what God gives us, meaning we're to watch it, to manage it. I tell friends all the time, and I don't tell them from a place of superiority. I tell them from a place of understanding. When people tell me they are tired of living check to check, I'm like, hello, who do you think creates these bills? There's not like little Keebler elves going out here making bills. We're the ones that make them. Change the bills. Change where you're putting your money, and then you can change how you're spending your check. That's how that works. And I know it sounds crazy and simple and maybe belittling, but that's not my intent. My intent is to make it so simple, because really managing our money is something we can do. It may not be something we want to do, but it is definitely something we can do. And rather than think about something happening supernatural, how about you be the supernatural change of being more of a steward over your money, watching your money, planning for your money, being strategic about your money, writing your budget down, and being intentional about what you do. So what, you miss a couple of things that other people are doing. If this is your season to do something different, if it's about strategy, then by all means miss something, miss a few gatherings, because it's worth it to get to the place that you desire. Tithing is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is not an excuse for you to do everything on faith and your account never go into the negative. It is not an excuse to be a poor manager of money and to buy the things that you want and beg for what you need. Tithing is the beginning of a discipline. And when you give and you start to give, you're going to pay attention. There's not many of you listening to this who have not prayed about your money. And when you're tithing and you are praying, God is going to talk to you about that money. He's going to show up in you. There is, when I was ready to stop acting like a child, the Bible says that when I was a child, I did childish things. But when I became a man, I put away my childish things. And children always think about pleasure first. They always think about a toy or what they want. When I was tired of acting childish in my finances and not knowing that I made more money than I had to show for, knowing that I wanted more things and not just hips, lips, and fingertips, but I actually wanted appreciating assets. I wanted things that would be long-term and not just things that were quick fixes or short-term, or things that were going to depreciate and had no value after a while. When I realized what I really wanted and I started to put away the childish behavior, and I was really praying and seeking God, it made me think 2 or 3 times about certain things. You know it's bad when you buy the same thing more than once. So my guilty pleasure, one of my places is TJ Maxx. And I would find I would go in and I would pick that same pair of pants or that same jacket. And I would have to think like, wait a minute, do I have it? And I started erring on the side of caution by leaving the jacket and taking a chance at home. I did that a few times and literally saved myself from buying the same thing, which told me a couple of things. Number one, you're not wearing what you bought. So I was not being a good steward over my money. Even if I had the money to spend, why buy the same thing and be irresponsible? So I hadn't even worn it. So why was I out looking for something else when I had not worn what I had? So when I started challenging my thought process, it changed the way I looked at everything, and it changed the way with money. Now I can court something and look at it 2 or 3 times, look at it every day and go, And after a while, the lust is not there as much. And it's like, okay, that's nice. But if I get it, how long is that going to make me happy? Because see, that's the way lust is. Lust is something you got to always keep feeding. When we do not manage ourselves and manage our desires, we will find ourselves feeding our desires until we're out of control. That's how we become obese when it comes physically, because we are feeding ourselves, eating our feelings, and we keep on doing it even when we're not hungry. That's how people become hoarders, because you buy things and hold on to things even when you don't need it. It is about keeping and holding things and getting things that we really don't need. And when I was tired of mismanaging money and wanted to be more intentional, I found ways to start looking at where I could save and cut back. I'm not going to tell you it was easy, because it's not. And every day is a challenge, and I am still doing it every day because I enjoy the finer things in life. But I enjoy being a good steward over my money more and not chasing money. You know how you hear people say, I'm a money chaser? When you manage money better, it's going to be better to you. It won't run from you. Money is a magnet. And if you can hold on to some, you will be surprised at the opportunities that will come for you to attract more income. Remember, the Bible tells us that God is the one who gives us power to obtain wealth. And you do not obtain wealth by spending everything that comes in. People who are wealthy are people who have not only made money, but they have learned to allow the money to make more money. And that can only be done through investments. That can only be done through intelligence and going to another level. And it definitely is not done by spending it all out. When you think about and you understand tithing, tithing lays a foundation for a discipline. It is obedience to God, number one. And it starts to break off the lustful spirit on money for you too, number two. And the breaking is a process. You will notice it slightly, and the more you do it and the more you remain consistent, and trust me, you will be tried. Because right now, maybe your tithes is only $100, maybe it's $200. But the more that money grows, you're going to be tried as to whether or not you keep tithing, because you're going to start thinking, oh my gosh, that's too much to give. But the devil is a lie. And as you continue to do it, you're going to watch yourself grow financially. It is impossible to give to God and to be God giving back to you. It just will never happen, because he tells us the very foundation of the gospel is that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If he would give his Son to redeem us back to him, how much more will he give you things like, cars or homes, or make sure that your bills are paid and make sure that you have the things you need? That's nothing to him. There is nothing too hard. But you've got to make sure you're doing your part in it. When you think about your money, think about how intentional you are about money and how unintentional you are. Because in those thoughts, in those moments, in those decisions, that's where your money lies. It's not in 10 cents on a dollar. It's not in 10%, period, I promise you. It's in those other decisions that you're doing and you're not thinking them through and you're not sure if you should do them and you're mismanaging funds. And I tell everybody, when you mismanage funds, it takes more than one pay cycle to get yourself back on track. It takes a couple of pay cycles because number one, you mismanaged, so you missed something important, and now you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you mad at the world. It's a process. Take the process, sit in it, because it's going to teach you something, and you will think 2 or 3 times about making that same decision again. If you borrow, if you get out of it real quick, it'll be easy for you to get back in it. That's why a lot of times when you get into those binds, people will stop giving it to you because it becomes a pattern. I'm telling you what I know. I'm not telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I've experienced. And when you start to commit yourself and you start to stay focused about being a better steward over what God gives you, you're going to watch the better ways and so many ways that you can make the money and you can retain the money and you can invest the money and the money will begin to make money. You cannot build generational wealth if you spend everything that comes in. Trust me, your lack of money is not about a dime out of every dollar. Bye-bye.